Hello and welcome to the Comedy Slab podcast, and a very special welcome to our many super fans, I think you'd call them, who like to leave comments on our various platforms. In fact, only this week I had a lovely comment which I thought was really quite profound. It said, you can't really say who's funny. Yes, we can. And who isn't? It's all about personal taste. But if you don't like a comedy show or comedian either on TV or radio, then switch it off. Thanks for that, Phil. That's very profound. I couldn't tell whether he's been ironic or sarcastic. Did you have any idea, Adrian, at all?
It's hard to know in print, isn't it, or on the screen. But if he was neither of those, then he is missing a massive irony, which is it's apparently all right to knock our podcast. And have a view on it.
I was going to reply and say, you can't really say what's funny in a podcast and what isn't. It's all about personal taste. But if you don't like a podcast or the people doing it, then switch it off.
Yes. Now, the thing about that is I'd want to check he lives nearer to you than to me before I sanction that in the name of the slab.
True.
In the name of the slab. You could make a personal comment and have a personal view on his view.
What I thought was really lovely as well is that we had another comment that said to the effect that we were on fire. Or should we, should be set on fire?
And yes, that was from a pyromaniac on the YouTube.
What I love about that is that when we get a nice one, anybody say anything nice, we always go, oh, that must be a Russian bot. Let's ignore that one.
Or that they're being deeply ironic and they mean the exact opposite. It also had 100 as in 100%.
Yeah.
So, 100% what, we ask ourselves. Is it because we're deeply insecure as pod artistes?
I blame you because I never encouraged interaction. I had 15 years of people. Do you know, like when you work in local radio, they're constantly on at you to tout for calls. What's your favourite colour? What's your favourite flavour bag of crisps? What's your best sandwich filling? And
what's your favourite tout for calls?
Yeah.
You see, you missed a trick there because you could get them to do it, so you don't have to think.
Yeah. Yeah, I must admit I should. There's somebody that I know that tweets out what they're going to be touting for calls, and I always share it with my wife because she works in the media as well. I always share it when I go, listen to this one tonight. It's brilliant. It's like,
that's cruel.
What did your grandparents pass on to you?
When did your grandparents pass on?
I wanted to tweet back genetic illness, but I thought, no, I'm better. Anyway, sorry, I got sidetracked.
On that happy note, yes.
Welcome to the Comedy Slab podcast. If you've not joined us before, it's two old geezers. Well, not that old.
No, steady on. Yeah, it's relative, isn't it?
Sitting and chatting about comedy programmes. And sadly, I mean, some people miss the point, but it isn't really about saying what's good and what isn't. It's just how we found particular comedy programmes, and we say this every week, but you can as Stan Laurel once said, you can lead a horse to water, but a pencil must be led. So we basically we choose on alternate weeks a comedy programme. It could be an old one, could be a new one, could be TV, could be radio, could be internet, could be another podcast. As long as it's there to raise a smile and make us titter, we'll be there to try and slab it if we possibly can. And we'll play 3 clips of the programme that we've chosen throughout the podcast today. And I think that's about it. Oh, we give it a score, don't we? Give it marks out of 10, how we found it. I get out of 5 and you give it out of 5.
That's pretty much it. A high 5 or a low 5?
Yeah, or no 5 at all.
Indeed.
So the programme that I chose, it was my turn to choose at the end of last week's programme. So the programme that I chose for this week was it's really confusing actually, because I didn't realise that I had a bit of history with this, so that I knew it already. But it's a programme called The Young Offenders. Before we go on to that though, I've got to mention a couple of sad passings this week, weren't there?
In fact, in the same 24-hour period, I think.
Dreadful.
Yeah. So Jonathan Miller,
3 actually, because it's not
three celebs. Yes, yeah.
Not non-comedic. First of all, was the celebrity chef Gary Rhodes, who was only 59 years old.
I know that was particularly shocking, wasn't it? I mean, I was partly shocked that he was even that old, because I think in my mind, I'm not a watcher of food programs, but in my mind, I always saw him as a young man.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like time had stood still, really, for me.
You remember them, or you think of them as you last saw them on the TV, don't you? That's the thing. It's like, the two Ronnies. It's like they've never gone, they've never left us. Anyway, sorry. So the other two were,
Jonathan Miller and Clive James. And I think you picked up on my tweet. I was about to tweet, and there's always the risk of me name dropping, but I don't mean it in a nasty way. It's no more meaningful or meaningless than someone who works in an office and said, Bob's not very well at the moment. Oh, right. And no one says, will you stop name dropping Bob, who works in accounts?
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's an occupational hazard. But I did work on a chat show with Jonathan Miller on, and it's just in a sort of cruel twist of fate, but also showing his, I suppose, courage and his wit. He talked about, and it's quite bizarre how it stayed with me, because this has to be, it's definitely over 20 years ago, because it's a phase of my work working at BBC TV Centre. Forgive me, regular listeners who hear me trot this out each week. But anyway, I finished that particular phase, the first phase, in 1998. So everything of that phase is more than 20 years ago now. And I just remember Jonathan Miller saying to the chat show host, I was in New York and watching the joggers in Central Park, everyone trying to keep fit, stay well and all of that. And he said with rather dark wit, I imagined they were being chased by the Grim Reaper, who said over their shoulder, I can keep up with you. So, of course, we all laughed. And, arguably you could say that's what humour is about. It's biting our thumb in the face of death and all of that. And then, of course, when he dies, somehow the laugh seems a bit more hollow, but on the other hand, you kind of feel he would still say that. He obviously knew, like all of us, that we're mortal. And he wasn't... Well, he was trained as a doctor, of course. So, they were acutely aware of that. That comes with the job description, doesn't it? But the show he was on, just before I tweeted this, another newsflash comes through on my phone, and Clive James has died, and it was the Clive James show.
That he was on.
Yeah. Now, I read an obit of Clive James today, and I'd forgotten there was a show called The Late Clive James, but I don't think it was that chat show. I think that was the serious... Because he had these kind of two-pronged approach to broadcasting. One was very mainstream. This is Clive James, reviewing TV and taking the rise and all of that. And then he had a very serious side. And I worked on, possibly only on a few occasions, where... On the Friday night, I worked on the Serious Chat Show, and the next day we'd be up the road because the Serious Chat Show, for some reason, the BBC still had Lime Grove studios.
Okay.
And so it was almost like I was following him around, and I had to hold in my head, these two very different Clive Jameses. But I find that interesting, and I think broadcasters who can do both, you're obviously more versatile, more hireable.
Well, I was going to say, both of the men you mentioned, they're both hugely intelligent men and funny men as well, and appreciate, had really good sense of humour and really appreciated comedy. And if you put in Jonathan Miller, if you're not aware of him, if you put him into the internet, and it'll bring up a page. One of the pages, I'm just looking at a black and white picture now of Beyond the Fringe, when they did it on Broadway. With Dudley Moore and Peter Cook and Dudley Moore and Alan Bennett as well. There's still recordings of that era, isn't there, of the four of them doing stuff on stage, which is fantastic. Yeah. I think it's really, because the other one, I always thought Jonathan Miller was very underrated in the comedic side of his work. As with Alan Bennett as well, because he became so prolific in his writing about his dear old mother and that kind of thing. He's, I don't know, kind of almost his early... He with Alan Bennett, to me, he got a bit old before his time, in a sense, and his comedy did as well. But there's some great recordings of them doing, Beyond the Fringe, which thankfully still exist. But, Clive James as well. I remember watching his programmes. I was associating with LWT for some reason. Why would that... Did he do a lot of work for them?
Yeah, I think that's when, from recollection, that preceded the BBC, and that's where he developed this reviewing TV from around the world, if I remember correctly.
That'd be about the time that Melvin Bragg was in charge, wouldn't it? I would have thought. Was it Melvin Bragg?
Was he in charge of the arts? I mean, certainly you had the South Bank show, didn't you, on Sunday nights?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. And so they were all believers that you could be both intelligent and popular at the same time.
Yeah.
And now I think we're in a bit more of a divided age. I don't want to sound too ancient on that, but I think it's harder to have both prongs of that kind of approach.
I don't think it's wanted anymore. I really don't. I mean, I was just looking at the body of work that is Rylan Clark Neal, is it? I think, to give him his full name. I think. Do you know who I mean? Do you know the guy that I mean?
No, not with you yet.
He came out of. I think he came out of X Factor or Britain's Got Talent or something. I don't know. It's one of those kind of programs. But he is almost omnipresent now. They've remade Supermarket Sweep with him as the host. He's
Previously Dale Winton, of course, the great intellectual of TV.
Yeah, the great heavyweight of TV.
Of the golden age I'm talking about.
Of course. He's doing this kind of like a lightweight Dragon's Den for Channel 4. I was flicking through the channels. He's on QVC. He's got his own range of candles and his own perfume or scent or whatever.
I don't really want to dwell too much on the idea of his own scent in candles. I mean, I wouldn't want Shane O'Connor scented candles.
I wonder what they'd smell of, but that's my wife. But my point is that I don't think, being clever. Being good enough isn't good enough anymore. I don't think. I think it's all about a different set of agendas, and I think that's why TV is suffering somewhat, really. But perhaps that's just because I'm of a different generation now. They seem to want this. There became a point as well where we started to celebrate idiocy in this country, didn't we? If people were, there's a guy off. And I've got to be careful because I'm out of my territory here, so I don't really know. There's a guy off. What's that program? The Only Way is Essex,
which had a reference in last week's show.
It did, yeah. But there's a guy in that, Joey Essex, and that's his shtick. I don't know if it is his shtick or if that's what he is, but he's like, he's really. In fact, he does an advert. Oh, I'm really that thick, kind of thing, and playing on it. So we celebrate. Lack of intelligence which I think is a bit sad, but I don't know.
Mind you, it's been a career boost to you and me, hasn't it?
It's done me no harm, mate. Done me no harm at all. Not knowing the right way to sit on the toilet has done me no harm. It's caused a lot of mess in my time, but it's done me no harm.
Yes, your cleaner has different thoughts on that. Anyway, shall we get on with slabbing this week's show then?
Yeah, The Young Offenders, as I say, is an RTE production. It's a radio television era, so it's an Irish programme that was commissioned by the BBC. And what I didn't realise, because I've seen it, it's a spin-off from a film. I don't know if you picked up on that. Did you pick up on that it's a spin-off?
Only belatedly. No, only when I was doing my homework, cramming as ever, earlier this evening.
It's a spin-off of a 2016 film, and I wouldn't mind, but I've seen the film. I've watched it. I mean,
talking about celebrating idiocy, you've got no recollection of the film. And it's not like they've got the same title. Oh, hang on, they have got the same title and the same people in the lead roles.
It's the same it's the same cast. The mother is the same person. The police officer is the same person. It's the same cast.
Don't keep digging, mate. When you're in a hole, stop digging, as Dennis Healy used to say.
Yeah. Anyway, so celebrating idiocy, I bought myself a cake with candles on it. So
4 candles.
So this is a 2016 film that was the creation of, I think, kind of the creation of the two lead characters, isn't it? Really, that they, although they're not the writers of it, but it's like
Mr. Foot is the writer, isn't he?
Yeah, it's an unusual way to spell foot, isn't it? Peter Foot with 2 T's.
Yes.
2 O's and 2 T's. And only 1 F.
2 feet, though, presumably.
You think if he was going to go that, he'd have had 2 F's as well, wouldn't you? So it's, how do you spell foot? Double F, double O, double T. That's foot.
It's a footling problem.
But yeah, so I mean that's basically it. And I have to say, because it's an Irish, it's very Irish, and by that I mean the accents are They don't go easy on you, do they? At all?
No, you will have to spend time, I think, tuning in, as I did, working out whereabouts in the world are they from. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and because the other thing I did, I just turned it up to 11 and put some headphones on, and there were still sentences that I replayed that went past me. You know, and this is my heritage. I should be able to understand this, but
exactly, Mr. O'Connor, you're an absolute disgrace to your people.
I don't know what to tell you. I really don't. Anyway, so without further ado, should we just whiz into a clip, because I can get your headline then, and we get some idea. I can feel you out. Get some. You always like that bit of the show.
I'm going to cover up the camera on Skype, so that you can't see my reaction.
Okay, I'll just so I get some idea of what he thought of it. So anyway, more or less straight out of the traps, we see our two lead characters, Conor and Jock, as we later find out they're called. Up on the roof of a building, nicking lead, as you do. They're taking all the lead. And they sort of have this conversation, you know, you can tell that they're good mates, because they're having this conversation. They say, well, what are you going to do with the money? And the one says, well, I really quite fancy, that in the local shop, he said, there's this great sex doll. He said that I quite fancy buying. And he said, and apparently when you squeeze her, she goes, ooh, and which is why they start making that noise. The one lad says, "Well, so I'm going to call mine Sapphire." He said, "What are you going to call yours?" And Jock says, "Well, I've chosen. I'm going to call mine Reuben."
That's the guy's name, though.
No, it's not, is it?
Yeah, Reuben. Yeah, that's the guy's name.
Reuben.
Yeah, see?
Reuben. Oh, yeah. Shit. Oh.
Ooh! Sapphire, ooh! That handsome-looking fella there is me, Conor McSweeney. Ooh! And that's my best pal, Jock. Everyone's always going on about me trying to be just like him. What a load of bull. Yeah, we have similar haircuts, but that's just the fashion. Aside from that, we have our own individual going on. Jock's the kind of fella who'd do anything for a friend. Like that time I bumped into Billy Murphy.
Hi, how's it going?
And he wanted to borrow me phone.
Give me your phone!
He's the local nutjob. Jock found this site on the internet where you can send them photos to someone, and they send you back a mask of their face.
Really, Billy?
It's amazing, isn't it? How different accents are within Ireland.
Yeah.
And amongst a population, in the Republic at least, of, what is it, around 5 million?
Well, about 4 million Irish, I think about 1 million non-Irish.
Right. Don't tell me there's any English over there. They're diluting them.
There's a lot of Eastern European over in Ireland, I think, at the moment. I was talking to relatives recently, and they said that I think it's about 4 million Irish and 1 million visitors.
Right. That's quite significant, isn't it, as a percentage? But even so, I doubt that's going to change a strong accent like a Cork accent there, which I did really, really badly and apologise for. So it took me a while to tune in. I find a lot of it is willpower. I knew, father of an ex-girlfriend from yonks ago. He said he just gave up on Rab C. Nesbitt. But and he was a bright guy. He was intelligent, but I guess he only ever moved amongst received pronunciation people in the city.
I do think that there is it's a bit like spatial awareness and having a good sense of direction. I think it's up. You can either
if it's like that, I'm finished then.
I do. I think it's one of those kind of things. You've either got it or you haven't. I think some people just can't get on. They just can't tune in. You know, that tuning in period you were talking about. They can't do that tuning in thing. But anyway, headline.
Yes. The young inoffenders.
What's that mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It's inoffensive.
It's inoffensive, but it's not really for me. But I gave it the time of day. Well, I mean, I'm contractually obliged to watch it twice under the strict rules endorsed by the UN, which are laid down for the comedy slab. Funnily enough, on slabs of stone, which came from Moses.
I thought they were. I thought they were EU directives, and we didn't have to do them after Brexit. I thought.
But this is an Irish show, isn't it? Yeah, work that one out. You see, it's yeah.
Do you know? I knew it wouldn't be for you. I'll be honest with you. I knew it wouldn't be your thing. So, I mean, bear in mind this was what did you call this last week? You said, is this not a wild card, lucky dip or something like that?
Oh yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And this, what every so often we'll slab something that neither of us have seen and neither of us kind of know anything about, other than we're aware of it being there. And this was one of those, wasn't it, for us?
Although it turned out you'd watched the film, as you said, but you weren't to have known at the time.
Yeah, it was. Do you know what? I watched it all, and I watched it all again, and I still never twigged it was only when I was reading about it afterwards. And I thought, have I seen that? And then I looked back through my library of films, and I thought, yeah, I have.
You have to check with your library now.
Unbelievable, yeah.
Well, at least you've got that reference point. But I don't feel so bad now about my. There's a movie called Total Recall. I have total unrecall,
right?
Total lack of recall with some films. If I love a film, I love it. I'm mad about Rocket Man at the moment, and have been ever since I saw it. But yeah, for those films, I'm a bit more iffy-wiffy, I think is the technical term. About. I used to have a maths teacher who said that. I've never heard anyone else say it, but it meant, just comme ci, comme ça, on the fence. Now, I will put a rider in, which I think it's a well-made example of what it is, if that makes any kind of sense. So, respect is due. And I do respect the fact that they haven't pulled their punches on the accent, because that's a major way of getting funding, I'm sure, from the Irish government or whichever body it was. There's quite a few bodies at the end. That wasn't what I was going to say. That's slightly cheeky, but there is also that point. If you're going to try and reflect Irish culture, then don't dilute it at the first instance, really.
When we were talking about this, weren't we? When we were talking about American accents or about American... when we were slabbing Master and Non a couple of episodes ago, and saying, that we didn't get a lot of the dialogue of what they were talking about, or I didn't get a lot of what they were talking about because they hadn't diluted it, whereas with us, we kind of think, the Americans won't understand that, we'll have to make it differently. But you're right, you've got to be brave, haven't you, with these things, and just go for it. Did you think it was too sweary, though? It was very, 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 very sweary, as you can tell by the clips. I mean, those were the cleaner bits we chose.
It's virtually wall-to-wall beeping, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I think the two go together. I think if you're going to have an authentic accent, and if you're trying to portray a place, warts and all, as it were, I think you've got to have that. Unless, of course, you're going for a, children's audience, in which case you would get shot down in flames. Yeah, obviously. So that's not going to happen. But no, I see it of a piece, and I'm not offended by quote bad language. I'm offended by poor writing and all the other things that we might whinge about. And I'm not saying this is an example of that. I think this is good writing. I didn't think there's too much.
It's weird. I was choosing some audiobooks the other day. I've got a load of credits that I haven't used up. I was saying to you about Audible, if you get 6 credits, they take them off you if you don't use them. So I was looking through some audiobooks, and I can't remember which one it was now because I've been looking at a lot. But one of them, in all the reviews, it said the language was just foul. It was just gratuitous, and it was just, there was no need for it, kind of thing. And I know whose book it was. It was the snooker player Ronnie O'Sullivan.
Right.
His first biography. I think he's got a second one out now. And I thought, that's a bit churlish, isn't it? Really. So anyway, I clicked on the sample. And they were right, and it was just like effing this and effing that when you didn't need to. It was the literal definition of gratuitous. There was just no need for him to say that word at that point.
But some people talk like that, don't they, conversationally? And I suppose he's trying to capture that, isn't he?
Exactly. That's probably what it was. That's probably why they chose to do it. But it's interesting how a lot of people, I thought, there's a lot of prudes about, but I actually felt the same.
Yeah.
And I could see exactly what they meant. But that doesn't do this. You're right. That doesn't, because it's contextual, isn't it? They're 2 young lads. They're in Cork. They're mixing up with the less savoury aspects of the city, and so you would expect them to talk like that, I suppose. But you touched on something as well. It's beautifully shot, isn't it? It's very filmic.
Yes, And for once, there was only one point when I thought, oh, this is wobbly cam, as I call handheld cameras, which rule the roost and have done for years now. And I really sound like an old geezer whinging about it. But on this occasion, I think it worked. I was able to forget, oh, well, wobbly cam means there's a human being holding it. Hang on, aren't I meant to forget there's a camera operator? But it just somehow worked in this context.
Writing was really sharp as well, wasn't it? I just like the dialogue between them. There was one point where somebody said, "Are you and your girlfriend?" And he went, "I'm not his girlfriend," and the other one went, "Relax, babe." I just thought it was nice, like, you know, batting backwards and forwards. They bounced off each other perfectly, didn't they? Really, it was.
But also, they were wearing masks at that point, which I think we'll get onto.
Yeah. Do you want to have another clip?
Should we do it? Yeah.
Listen to the guys in action. I mean, basically, they've been wearing masks. And they were wearing masks in their getaway from their lead heist, which is more or less the whole episode is about. This is that they stole the lead, and whilst trying to make their escape, they got covered in bright yellow paint. And then they had to ditch their clothes and pretend that it wasn't them at all because they were wearing masks and they hadn't been seen and all the rest of it. Anyway, they ended up being in trouble at school, and the boys have been hauled in front of the principal of the school, Principal Walsh. I love the actor who played him. I thought he was just right. He's just perfect. And also Healy, who's the guard, isn't he? He's the guardie that's always after him. The policeman, to answer questions. Anyway, they're hauled in to answer questions about the robbery.
This is the closest Healy has got to catching Jock in a whole year of chasing him. What a dickhead.
Your daughters are fine looking girls, Principal Walsh. You must be very proud.
Yeah, they have really clear skin, which is rare for our age.
Give me that.
2 masked teenagers from this school are wanted for robbery and causing destruction of property in the city yesterday. They fit your description. Imagine that.
Yeah, imagine.
Imagine that.
Imagine that.
Sorry, I don't understand what you mean, our description.
Well, one of them was tall, lanky, skinny, kind of goofy looking. The other one?
Small and fat. Sort of ridiculous and slower. Much slower than the other one.
There's lots of people that look like us. Our haircut, everyone copied us once we got our haircut. People are even trying to grow to look like us. And shrink to look like us.
Where were you yesterday, both of you?
Not where you think we were anyway.
No.
Oh, yeah? Where were you?
Where?
With Cons, ma'am.
With your mum. With your mum.
Yep. This was gonna hurt.
Yes, what to say? He is a fresh-faced copper, isn't he? He's the handsome chap.
Yeah, although he has, like I say, he was the copper in the 2016 film as well, so he was even more fresh-faced then, I guess.
Wow, he's aging well. Yeah. Barry Walsh, the head teacher, as you say, the actor PJ Gallagher, it would be Gallagher with a hard G, would it, in Ireland?
Well, they might say Gallagher, I don't know.
Right. I'm trying.
I don't know what the rules are, but...
No, well, if you don't know, have some sympathy for me. Anyway, as well as being an actor, he's a stand-up comic, and he played a different role in the film. Is that right? I thought I'd read somewhere.
Oh, I don't know.
I can't see it now. I'm trying to find it in real time, which is always dangerous. Anyway, showing a bit of versatility, if I did read that correctly. So, yeah, good cast. It's just not my cup of tea, and I don't think it's aimed at my age group. I mean, the clue is it's on BBC Three, which does mean we don't have some shows we really enjoy on BBC Three. I think it's a good example of what it's trying to do. I just find it, I mean, I think I'm a bit, it's the over-empathy coming in. I find it painful. And I know, arguably, you're meant to find it painful, and a lot of comedy, particularly, I suppose, more contemporary comedy, can be the comedy of pain. But painful, the lack of respect for authority, to the point where I just thought, oh gosh, I wouldn't want to be in their shoes. Anyone trying to have any sort of authority, you could see where the contempt and distrust came from. These are people on I guess, well, would you say a rough estate or whatever? And you know, they're living low on the hog rather than high on the hog. So a bit down at heel there, but there's a lot of love in it, which is I think really redeeming. But you know, and this is, I mean, did this worry you? Because I know you like your believability. There's a photo of the headmaster at the school, and then an offensive graffito, I think is the singular of graffiti, above, saying I think it's the term used there, wasn't it? The biggest dickhead or something. Yeah. And an arrow pointing to. Now, what head teacher, you know, in the real world, if we're being literal about it, they're not going to tolerate that for a minute after they see it.
No,
does that not worry you?
Well, no, because I kind of thought that had been that hadn't been there for any length of time. It's funny how you kind of
you forgave it, didn't you?
I actually thought that. I kind of that thought process occurred to me. You know, as would that be like? Oh, it could have been done that morning. You know, they've only just arrived at school, and so
that shows you're in sympathy with the show, doesn't it? That you're making excuses, as it were, for it.
Probably, or I'm prepared to forgive and give them I'm thinking of an alibi for them before they've even committed a crime, aren't I? Really, I suppose. You're right. I mean, you're absolutely bang on. It isn't aimed at our age group. I got to be honest with you. I fell in love with this program. I can't wait to watch the next episodes. I thought it was. To me, it was. Have you ever seen the In-Betweeners?
No, only. I think you were asking me a few slabs ago, and I've just seen one clip on YouTube just to find out what people were talking about. I think I'd have the same difficulty with it, but I'm very happy we must put it on the slab one of these days, mustn't we?
To me, it was an Irish In-Betweeners. You know, it was that, but like instead of being 4 main characters in In-Betweeners, it was just 2. But despite the fact that it isn't, I mean, this kind of blows out the water. I mean, we always say this, don't we? This idea that, you know, you only want to see a reflection of yourself is ludicrous, isn't it, really? You know, I always used to have this argument with working in local radio, and they'd say, oh, well, you know, these are the narrow parameters that people are interested in. I say, well, you think they're not interested in something that's happened over the border of their county. They're not going to, oh, I'm not interested in that because I live in this county and I don't live in. It's ludicrous to think that. And I think with this, I mean, it is, I mean, I actually Googled, because I've never been to Cork. And I Googled, is it an accurate representation?
You Googled that,
and it came back very much. Yes, it is.
Oh,
because
Google hath spoken.
Because well, normally the one that they normally take the mickey out, in my experience from other comedians that I've heard, normally it's Limerick which is they nicknamed Stab City, because a number of years ago there was quite a lot of stabbings going on. And it's Limerick is the one that they usually is the brunt of the, you know, the jokes kind of thing. Right. So I'd not really heard this about Cork, so I just looked it up and you know, I mean, it must be a question that is often asked, because otherwise the answer
wouldn't be a Google answer.
No, it wouldn't come up so readily.
If I did that, I'm surely you would quiz me and say, well, what authority does Google have? And presumably, is it coming from the people? What did it link you to? Because there are these little gobbets of information on Google, but you've always got to query, well, who says who?
Yeah, I mean, well, I then went on to say what are the roughest parts of Cork, and then there was this tourist website that said you don't want to be out in the evenings in these places.
Right,
which are suburbs of you know. So, and then I went onto Google Maps and had a look at the streets to get a feel for the streets, and they look very much like they did in the depiction. So I'm not sure, because I think the production company are based in Wicklow, so we're just south of Dublin. So I'm not sure that, you know, whether I presume they filmed it in Cork. I'm guessing. I mean, I don't know. But yeah, because if you don't, it's just to try to get a feel for how accurate was what they were saying about who they were saying it about. I think it's you know, it's quite fair game, isn't it, to look that up really and suss it out.
Of course it is. I'm just pushing you a little bit and needling you. Some people might be saying that might be tempted to accuse me, and I'm tempted to do it myself, of proving the point that people don't. You know, it could sound like I don't want to see people who are different to me, but I hope it isn't that. It's one of those, does it hit the spot kind of things.
I wonder whether it's an Irish thing that you have a blind spot with, and I say that with the best will in the world. No,
how very dare you?
No, I tell you why. It's because I think I've said this to you before, is that I struggle with Scottish comedy. I always have done, and I don't know what it is. That you were saying about Rab C. Nesbitt. When everybody was raving about Rab C. Nesbitt, I just couldn't get it.
Well, I didn't rave, but I did watch a few, actually, which, as you know, for me is, these days, maybe I was different then, I don't know, more inclined to stick with the series. But I did like Rabsy. No, I mean, I absolutely love some of the Irish stand-ups. Irish surreal humour, to me, is a cut above English surreal humour. So anyone going away with the impression that I might have a little problem with our friends over the Irish Sea, I certainly have a problem with doing the accent. And,
no, I don't mean a problem with them in that sense, but a problem with, like I say, like in the same way that I've got a problem with Scottish comedy. On the whole, I generally find, and it kind of ruins it for me, because if I'll see something, I think, I wonder what, this is a new comedy, and I'll listen to it or watch it, and I go, oh, it's Scottish. Okay, well, go on, give it a, and I just can't. It's like a different mindset, and I can't get into the mindset. It's like if you go and you watch comedy in India, for example, on Indian TV, and they're actually I don't know if you've ever seen it, but when I went to India and I was scanning through the TV channels, and they do comedy programs in English on Indian TV, and I think most people go, that's just not funny, because it's a different, culturally, comedy sits in a different place.
Right. That's you and your bleeping devices.
Sorry,
again.
that was just a text from the Indian ambassador.
She wants a word with you.
What's the word? Yeah. So, do you know what I mean? And I don't think that's a. I don't mean that. It doesn't mean to say, oh, it's the worst thing in the world. It's like our friend on YouTube said. It's all very subjective, isn't it? It's a subjective feeling, whether you find
was that the friend on YouTube who likes us or doesn't like us?
No,
or are they being ironic?
One. Not.
Well, they're being ironic, I tell myself. Anyway, before I forget, and before the lawyers get in touch, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but I would guess, is it Vico Films, do you think?
Yeah.
Which is the company, I'm sure you've done the homework on this, as you always do, due diligence. That's Peter Foot with 2 T's and only 1 foot. No, 1 F. That's his company, isn't it?
That's his production company, yeah.
So,
which was
Vico
more or less
Films
set up to do the film, wasn't it? I think, and then they've kind of
right, and then the spin-off.
They've got this
TV
commission
series.
Yeah.
So Vico Films for the BBC in association with RTE. So I do that with huge love for the accent, but I make it sound like I'm taking the mick. That's irony going wrong again. And on the BBC, it's on BBC Three. And as and when it's available, which it may or may not be as you're listening to us, depending on when it's last been shown and the window and all of that, it'll be on iPlayer.
Final clip then, and I'm glad you talked earlier on about how there was a lot of love in this, because that was one of the things that I really liked. There was a lot of love in the storyline. The characters felt real empathy for each other, didn't they? There was some really nice moments, and I thought if we're going to capture some clips off there, I thought, let's do one as well where it shows that empathy with other characters. Jock and Conor have got this lovely relationship, which there was a nice little scene actually where he's talking to his mum, and she was saying about if they had a sexual relationship, what it would be like. I thought was really fantastic, but it was just lovely, the whole thing. I just thought, they were really likeable characters, and the way that they interacted with each other was really likeable. In this clip, Conor is asked. This is after they've been bubbled now. The cops and the
is that a term?
What, been bubbled? Well, it is now. I just
obviously
Google it. And
is Shane O'Connor a real bubbler?
And the cops and Principal Walsh have figured out that it's them that took the lead off the roof. And Conor is asked to turn in his best mate, Jock, and even his mum pleads with him.
Conor, Please don't make me one of them single mothers with a convicted son.
Youth detention centres are designed to help people like Jock, but it won't suit a cute little fella like you. Trust me.
You know what? You all have it in for Jock. Everyone does. The only person that's on his side is me, and you're saying I should him over. He's so misjudged, like. He doesn't have it easy, but he doesn't bitch and moan about it like most people. He rarely says nasty stuff about anyone. He's gonna be one of them fellas who does something great with his life. There's no way in hell I'd ever turn my back on him seeking all off.
All right then. You leave me with no choice.
Can I just say, and I think that illustrated it, some lovely music. And I thought a show which I was guessing would not, shall we say, have an over-generous budget, would struggle to find the budget for specially written music. But the credits seem to confirm it was specially written by Ray Harmon. And I have to say, I should know better, but I was fooled. It's only when I was listening again to the clips just an hour or two before we sat down to record, I thought those were real strings the first time I listened. And then listening again, it sounded like synthesizer strings, which I think they would have to be. Again, coming back to the budget thing. But if I was fooled once, then they must be pretty good. If I've got that right. But did you find the music quite moving, and it helped underline the story of
absolutely,
emotions?
Absolutely with you on that 100%. That's what I put in the notes, that, you know, just great, and an eclectic mix of music as well. The music kind of, in many different styles, followed the action that you were seeing on screen. That's I think that's why I said to you right at the start that it was very filmic. I think they've obviously learned their craft with the film, and I think all of that, like the way it was shot and the music and the sound quality, I think all kind of made it feel a bit bigger than it actually was. And it's interesting to see as well, the way that, because we're so used to being fed a diet of production companies that work predominantly in this country for the BBC or ITV or Channel 4, aren't we, really? I suppose those are the three main commissioners. And I think it's always interesting, Adrian, to see how somebody who's working in another country for another broadcaster does it. You know, what their influences are and how they work and what they do. So hats off to them, I think, because I think it was just nice. It was almost refreshing in a way to see, you know, oh, well, this is the way that RTE would do it, or this is the way that companies that are working for RTE or companies in Ireland do it. It was, I don't know, I just found it quite refreshing, really.
Yeah. And I was just looking about the press reaction to the show, and the Irish Independent. It's sort of what you're saying about the music there. The Irish Independent were quite positive. I was reading on the Wikification a positive review of the programme after the broadcast of the first episode, commenting, "It takes the best of the movie and builds on it." Be interesting if you went back to the movie, and if I ever carved out enough time and commitment to see the movie, maybe if I was in a plane, that would be when it would happen. So I can't go for a walk or anything. It'd be interesting to see what the film would look like, having seen this episode. So yeah, I mean, I certainly got respect for it, and I think it's what you're saying about how the music elevated it, or words to that effect. The show in general gave dignity to these characters, didn't it? And I think that's what was nice about it. We don't have enough of that.
And they weren't, you know, but it would have been easy for them to be one-dimensional scallies, wouldn't it, really? You know, you're right, but there was a bit of depth in the writing, and the actors, I felt, took that on, and I thought that they kind of created and crafted all of the characters. I mean, even the, you know, the guard, and the head teacher, you kind of still got, even that one episode and the scenes that they had, you got a sense of the character beneath the dialogue. I kind of I thought it was very well executed. Interestingly enough, talking about the execution of it, Tom Marshall, the director, I looked up and just to see what else he'd done, and went right back. He'd actually appeared. Do you remember Please Sir with John Alderton?
Duffy.
He actually appeared in an episode as an actor in Please Sir in 1969, and then went on. The next thing 69. He did in 1971, he was in Doctor at Large, which was another 1970s. Do you remember Frankie Abbott from the character? He always used to wear a leather jacket. Oh, do you want me to sort him out, Duffy? I'll sort him out for you.
It was a hard nut.
Yeah, I actually interviewed the guy who played him, David Barry, who my producer phoned him up to get him on the show, and he was like, well, why would does he remember me then? Why would people want? And he had no.
Oh, I think you've mentioned in a previous Slab, or maybe I'm confusing with another actor of a similar ilk.
Oh no, I was telling you a couple of episodes ago about. I'm terrible with names. Oh, what's his name? No, that was somebody different. But no, he couldn't believe that somebody remembered Please Sir. Never mind him.
Oh gosh,
it's quite incredible, really. But yeah, that was the first thing Tom Marshall ever did. Was 1969 in the TV industry. Was he appeared in an episode of Please Sir?
I don't know how far to go down this route. Maybe I'll have to choose my words carefully. But I nearly caused a retake on EastEnders once because I was in the control room.
Did you kick the drums over at the end?
It's almost worse than that. You will see the connection here in a sec.
Go on.
I was mixing in the gallery and had a guy up on a boom, a lovely guy called Clive. And I have no idea how we got there, but shall we say, I just floated the idea of what noises Derek Geiler would make at the point of passion, shall we say. Anyway, let's leave that there. But this is a very quiet scene in EastEnders where, of all the people you don't want to make an unscripted noise, the sound engineer would be premier. There's virtually a sackable offence to cause a retake as a sound person because you've made the sound yourself. Couldn't suppress the laughter. Anyway, one of those bizarre memories. But it seems like the day before yesterday, Please Sir, and all of that. And there's a thing.
Yeah. Anyway, time for the scores on the doors.
Yeah, Miss Ford. Ford. Or whoever. Shall I go first? I think. Did you go first last time?
Yeah,
I think you actually volunteered to go first. I will do, and I'm going to give it 3 scores.
Oh.
But it will all fall into shape. If it was on production values and general quality, I think I'd have to give it a 3.5. If it was purely on, was it my cup of tea, it'd be 2.5. So I'm going to cheat and probably break some of those fundamental UN or EU rules of the Slab, and give it 3, which is a recognition of the quality of it, but it's not quite for me.
I've given it a 4. I love it. Like I say, I can't wait. I've got the rest of that series, and the rest of series 2 waiting for me with my name on it. And they've also
you have to put your own name on it at home, do you?
They've also,
a little bit
it's
sad.
In the fridge, and
it's in your blazer
next to Shane's cornflakes, and I don't know why I keep those in the fridge. And they've just been greenlit for a series 3, I think. Now the interesting thing will be, and I've fallen. I tell you what, I thought kind of fell foul of this was Stathlet's Flats, which I went on to watch the rest of the series.
Oh, that difficult second series you thought wasn't that good?
No, the rest of the first series.
Oh gosh,
it just felt like Groundhog Day. It felt like more of the same, really. And it'll be interesting to see how this pans out in terms of sustain, whether they can actually keep that going. But yeah, I'll give it a 4 out of 5, giving The Young Offenders a grand total of 7. You can find it on BBC 3's website thingy, basically. If you there's a link on the description anyway, so you'll be able to find that as well if you want to go back. And all episodes of both series are available to watch right now. So,
am I setting homework by any chance?
For next week, sweetie?
Yeah. Well, It was something you said the other week that got the cogs whirring, which is always dangerous.
Yeah.
You said, and it's one of those blanket statements. I nearly said a bald statement, but I should spare both our blushes and both our follicles, one each. Leave it messy. That's another joke entirely. But I thought, panel shows, how can I wind Shane up and yet not quite wind him up? And also have something entirely selfishly that I quite like. And the answer comes in, and I think a lot of people will get what I'm talking about when I use the phrase, the antidote to panel games.
Oh, yeah.
Would that phrase mean something to you?
Yeah, straight away. You know what? It's just like a sense of relief, actually, because when you're talking about, I have a deep loathing and hatred for panel shows. I really do.
I'm still tempted. There's still that bloody-minded, if I may use that term, part of me that wants to punish you.
That's the deal, isn't it? That's the thing. The choice. The choice is sacrosanct, and that's it. If that's what you choose, that's what we have to watch and slab. So
it's EU rules or UN rules, as I say, whichever it is.
EU rules, okay, yeah.
Boom. But at least this one I enjoy. I'm going to guess you enjoy it too. It's a very long-running series. To say it's Series 72 is a bit of a clue, as is the word clue, which is how it's known for short. BBC Radio 4 listeners will know it immediately. I'm talking about I'm Sorry, I Haven't a Clue.
72? That is obscene, isn't it, really?
Well, it's either obscene or the most wonderful thing. No one could have imagined it. Anyway, it's not 72 years old. I think that's 2 series a year. But even that makes it 36 years. It is, in fact, over 36 years, so there must have been more than 2 series some years. Anyway, the one I've gone for, as we speak, people shouldn't hang about too long, because it doesn't hang about too long on BBC Sounds, the catch-up service, certainly available within the UK. You might get this outside the UK on bbc.com, or it will come round again. You can imagine with that many series, they might dig deep for victory. Into their I'm Sorry, I Haven't a Clue vaults. But it's the one set at New Theatre Royal in Portsmouth, and it was recorded on, or at least it went to air, on the 25th of November, 2019. So available for a little while, but not that long. So I'm Sorry, I Haven't a Clue at the one set in Portsmouth, Series 72.
Don't forget, if you've enjoyed the Comedy Slab, you can catch up with us on Twitter, on Facebook, and I think we tweet quite. You're more of a tweeter than I am. You kind of tweet quite regularly via the.
I'm not up there with the Stephen Fry type, but I dust it off occasionally.
I think it's nice. I think less is more, really. You don't know it's them again, what they're talking about, just to keep, you become, they call it doing a Lily Allen, don't they, when you just like tweet because you feel that your profile's gone down slightly and nobody's noticed you for a couple of days. But yeah, Twitter and Facebook are the places that you can find us, and you can also leave comments on YouTube, for better or for worse.
We hope better, don't we? I mean, we're biased, but if you think we're hot, and I don't mean necessarily as romantic prospects, and Shane is married and I'm, well, anyway, yes. I'll get you into deep trouble there. But yes, we should really turn the Comedy Slab into a dating app, just for me, if not for you. As I'm not so far away from not being married. That's a digression. I've forgotten entirely. Oh, yeah, we're based at Spreaker.com, but the Comedy Slab, you Google it, as Shane's oft to be heard saying, and not least to his poor young son, or that will be the catchphrase, I think, in years to come. When he says, please, Dad, what's please, sir? Google it, son.
Google it, son. What's the matter with you? So until next time, thank you very much for your company. Thanks for listening. Hope you've enjoyed the podcast. I'm off to spend the rest of the evening with my sex doll, Reuben.
Ooh! And I am going to, I can't really cap that, as it were. I'm going to an evening class to learn cork.
Ooh!
Ooh! Put your hands away.